Hello and welcome to another episode of the N64 Japanese Eye. As always, this is the show where we take a look at Japanese exclusive N64 titles and try to answer the simple question: can you play and enjoy it without knowing any Japanese whatsoever? Now, ever since I was a child, I've always loved seeing huge robot mechs smashing each other around in cartoons. But by the time I was in my late teens, it was not really piquing my interest, and so a game where you do just that was not really likely to be a day one pickup for me. Last Legion UX was developed by Dukes and published by Hudson. Landing in Japan in mid-1999, it was for a while scheduled for a Western release. The problem was that no publishers decided to take up the option to release it over here, and so it became one of the more well-known games not to be released in the West. Last Legion UX lets you take control of battle mech in one-on-one deathmatches. You are not limited in the arenas you face, as there are many multiple environments, each with their own tunnels, caves, features and challenges. Sometimes the actual maps themselves can be as challenging as the opponents you are facing. The main game mode is its single player story, where the world has been divided between two rival forces. You have the Light Ride Army, who are against the Union 4. Within the four worlds in the game there exists a special ore called a Power Stone, which is the most powerful and pure form of energy. You have 6 different mechs to choose from in the story mode, and whilst the cutscene text is not in English, you'll find that the menus are easy to follow, as well as the character selection screen. And speaking of the character selection screen, this is not just about which mech you want to play as, but also how you want to kit them out for battle. You have the ability to choose between different weapons, which all have their own strengths and weaknesses, as well as your shield. So opting for a small shield, for example, will give you a higher jump and quicker movement, but it will leave you more vulnerable to attacks. The same too can be said for the weapons, which range from long distance blasters, which you'll use to fight at a distance, or saber blades for those who like to get up close and personal when fighting. This really adds a nice level of depth to the game, as it will make you plan how you will approach each enemy that you encounter, and also adjust your tactics if you find that you're getting taken down too easily. It's not just your enemies that you need to consider though. Each of the game's maps features many different levels and coves, and so you'll often find that you'll need as much mobility as you do firepower. Whilst the single player mode is fun, the story can be beaten fairly quickly once you get to grips with handling your mech. The single player mode also features an arcade-like setting where you can choose your opponent and their gear for some quick matches or just to brush up on your skills. The multiplayer mode also gives you a way to play the game against friends, although in my opinion you'll need to find a friend of a similar skill level to make this a worthy multiplayer game in your collection. It's really not a game that somebody new to the series can just pick up and play easily. This is because whilst the game has some very intuitive controls, it's the freedom of movement that will take some getting used to. As you're not bound by ground combat, you can jump, hover and glide around the environments as you search for your rival. The game does feature a lock-on button, but this only lasts for a short time, so when you first start playing you'll spend a large amount of time just using this before you can actually handle the game on your own. The death matches are not just straight up brawls though, there's a huge amount of skill involved when playing. So aside from using your primary and secondary weapons, you also have special moves that you can pull off for serious damage. These are not just on the ground but also in the air too. But perhaps the coolest feature in the game though is the ability to get an instant kill by ripping out the power core of your opponent. These are not easy to do however, but with some practice you'll learn the perfect moment in battle to attempt this, and when you do pull it off, there's nothing more satisfying to do in the game. Sure, the graphics did look a little bit dated even on the game's release, and the music is nothing really to write home about, but the character designs are top class and there's not really much else like it on the console. So if you love games like Armored Core, Zone of the Enders and Super Robot Spirits, then I really think this is a game that could be right up your street. It's not the most polished mech game I've ever played, but there's no denying that this is fun to play. It's also helped by the fact that even without knowing any Japanese you can still complete the game, understand how to play it, and most importantly, have fun with it. And so as usual, I want to know what you think about this game. Perhaps you imported it back in the day, or did your local video game store, like mine, specifically import Japanese titles that they knew could be played without knowing the lingo? So as always, sound off in the comments section down below, and until next time.